welcome my good buddy from over at the Bluegrass Country Theater, Mac McGahey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey! Better known as the Dancing Fiddle Man, Michael.
You gotta get pretty close to these things so they can hear it, I reckon.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say, tell you all how it inspired me. Well, I started playing when I was 7.5 years old. That is playing the fiddle, supposed to be. But when I heard Howdy, it was a different music. He made them big old fat notes come out just clear, and I told my brother, I said, I'm going to learn how to do that. And so at the time I was working in the cotton mill about 200 miles away from my home. And so if my brother was driving, I'd play the fiddle. And I said, now when I hear a note that sounds like his, you let me know. And so I'd tear down and I'd cut down on something, you know, and I said, does that sound like it? He said, well, almost, but that's not it. And so after a year of this, I figured no way that I could learn how to play like Howdy Foster. And so I figured I had to come up with something, so if I ever got on a contest or something with him, well, I could come up with him, so I started dancing. Thank you.
Give it back a hand. Thank you, Mac. Mac is really a marvelous fiddle player. He is, boy. He's a great entertainer. Another gentleman I want to come out and say a few words is the guy that sang the national anthem for you a while ago, and a great country musician and entertainer. And he wants to say a few words about Howdy Forster. Make welcome Charlie Walker, ladies and gentlemen. Charlie Walker.
Thank you very much, Porter. I grew up on a cotton farm up north of Dallas as a boy, and I was telling Howdy, I told him many times this story. We would listen to the 12 o'clock news on KRLD. There was a guy named Meadow Larry, had the news, 12 o'clock. Then we'd switch over to get the Chuck Wagon gang at 12:15 out of Fort Worth. And we'd come back at 12:30, and they had the Texas Roundup game, which is Georgia Slim, Big Howdy, and Miss Ludy, and Gus Foster. And at about 12:45, Maul Perkins came on, and we'd switch over and catch a little bit of Maul Perkins. About halfway through Maul Perkins, Dad would say, boys, we've got to go back to the field and chop some more cotton. Never did find out what happened to Maul Perkins, but I just want to say that the first time I was ever on the radio, ever sung through a microphone and broadcasting, was on KRLD up on the mezzanine of the Dolphins Hotel in Dallas. And it was Rex Griffin and Georgia Slim at that time. Howdy had come on up to Nashville. He'd gotten out of the service, came on up here with Mr. Acuff. But these were the guys that I had listened to as a boy and that inspired me. In addition to Jimmy Rogers and some of the others, Mr. Acuff and Ernest Tubb and Bob Wills and Gene Autry, different ones. But we listened to them all the time on KRLD, and the first time I ever sung was on the program there that Rex Griffin and them introduced me on KRLD. And I just want to say it's a pleasure, Porter, to be with this great tribute for one of the real legends, true living legends in country music, one of the greatest fiddlers, and I think that he and Georgia Slim, as far as breakdown music went, I don't think there's ever been two that played as close to harmony as they did. Their bows went right together. I mean, I saw them many times, and I think they were the greatest. Thank you, Porter.
Charlie Walker, thank you, Charlie. Thank you very much, Charlie. Another very fine fiddle player and violinist, and a guy that I'm sure all of you have seen and heard many times with the Riders in the Sky. He's the guy that does the fiddling with them, and a very fine person and a big fan of Big Howdy Forster. So I want to get him to come out, and he has a little prepared statement to say to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Woody Paul of the Riders in the Sky.
Thank you both. Yeah, I do have something I want to say while we're all taking our time up here. I'm just really, really delighted that this contest this year is being dedicated to Howard Forrester, who, in my opinion, was and still is one of the greatest fiddle players of all time. And he's been my hero for 25 years and still my favorite fiddle player. And I'm no speech maker. I still actually play the fiddle, but I'm like Mac. I spin the rope now instead of trying to keep up with Howdy. And but I've got some things I'd like to say. I grew up about 30 miles south of here on the farm and started playing the fiddle when I was 11, listened to the Grand Ole Opry, and And by the time I was 13, I could play a little bit, but I realized that this guy that I heard on the Grand Ole Opry on Saturday night playing with Roy Acuff was really something. He wasn't like all the rest of them. He played with great authority. He played those notes way up high and clear and clean, and nobody else did that. And he made up his own tunes. That's something about Howdy that most fiddle players didn't do. And they were beautiful tunes. He was a composer. He was very creative about his playing. He had a style, a technique that no one could touch. Well, I wanted to do it, and I couldn't. I got some of his records, and I couldn't figure it out. And my dad said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll just go see Howdy Forrester. So he figured out somehow where Howdy Forrester's office was down here in Nashville. And he packed me and my mom up in the car one hot summer afternoon. We came down to Nashville, down to Old Acuff and Rose, and just kind of barged in on Howdy right there in his office. And at that time, Howdy was working also as a talent agent. He booked acts all over the country. He booked Roy Acuff. That afternoon, he was booking Roy Acuff in the Cow Palace in San Francisco, I recall. And we just kind of walked in his office, but he stopped his phone calls there to take time to listen to a little old skinny redneck kid from Triune who played the fiddle. And I played it for a minute or two there, and then he did something that most fiddle players wouldn't do. I would just say, well, son, that's great, I'm going back home and keep practicing, that's fine. But Howard took the time. He took the time to show me how to hold the fiddle. He took the time to show me how to hold the bow. He took the time to show me how to do some of that fancy position work that he did that the other fiddlers didn't do. And it didn't mean much at the time, but it means a lot right now, thinking back. He took the time to show me a lot about playing the fiddle. And he stressed one thing. He said, now, whenever you get that fiddle out of the case to play it, you make sure it's in tune. And that's something I can't do to this day. But anyway, that day started a hero worship for me with Harry Forrester, and through my teens, I became a regular fixture backstage in Roy Acuff's dressing room at the Grand Ole Opry. The door was always open there, and the welcome mat was always extended. And those gentlemen with the Smoky Mountain Boys, Howard in particular, was always extremely encouraging, and I worked real hard and learned all of his fiddle tunes as best I could, but I never could play them like Howdy. Just like Mac couldn't ever play them like Howdy. No one could. And further than that, more importantly, Howard encouraged me to go to school. To not get in this business, I guess. And I did. I went on to school. I went on, graduated from high school and from Vanderbilt, and went on and got a doctorate at MIT. And while I was in Boston at MIT, one day I pulled out my fiddle, kind of depressed, and hadn't played in a couple of years, and went down on the Boston Common and started playing Howdy Forrester fiddle tunes. And before the afternoon was over, there was over $100 in my fiddle case just from people passing by. Now you don't have to be a doctor to put two and two together or to count up that much money, So maybe I ought to be doing something else. So I came back to Nashville, and sure enough, within just a short time, once again, Howard Forrester got me a job on the Grand Ole Opry, working with Miss Wilton with Fiddler. And well, what can you say? Through the years, Howard Forrester is not just a great fiddle player, but a great, wonderful, caring, helpful person. I have no doubt that it's through my association, a great part with him and the Smoky Mountain Boys that I and Ryderson Scott are actually members of the outfit today. And wonderful, caring, encouraging, helpful individual, great man, great fiddle player. I love him dearly. And I'm very, very grateful that I can be a part of this dedication to him here today. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Doc. And thank you, Howard Forrester.
Thank you, Woody, very, very much. I want to get one more person to come out here that is one of the biggest fans of Howdy Forrester, and a guy that has won the Grandmaster's Fiddling Championship, and truly a great fiddle player, and one of my favorite friends, Vernon Solomon. Would you make him welcome, please? Vernon Solomon.
First time I saw Howard was in about 1946. Me and Jordan Slim had a country music show in Dallas, Texas called Cornbread Matinee. And they were some of the greatest entertainers that I ever run into, and two of the greatest fiddle players, I believe, and I ever saw. My dad, I thought, was a real good fiddle player, but he took his hat off, Howard Forrester. Anyway, when I come to Nashville in 72 on the loft, the old country go up here, and this is a big, fast town. Howard took me under his wing, made me feel welcome. I met his whole family, and they just left a lasting impression in my heart. Do all of you know out there that Howard Forrester can play the fiddle? Let's hear it for you. Bless your heart. And all I can say is he inspired me, and he encouraged all of us guys that were a little younger than he was to stay with the basics, keep trying to keep the old fiddle alive, and that's what he's done all these years. And I'd like to thank him on my behalf, and I'm looking forward to many, many more fiddle sessions with Howard Forrester. God bless.
Vernon Solomon. Now, I want you all to make welcome a great gentleman, man that is the head man of the Grand Ole Opry, gentleman I've had the pleasure of knowing for many, many years, and wonderful man to make some presentations to Howard Forrester. Hal Durham, ladies and gentlemen.
Porter, I couldn't help but think as we listen to folks here who talk about their influence, how they've been influenced by Howard and what he's meant to them, and the countless others around the world who, if they could be here, would say the same thing. I recall one of my many trips abroad, one in the last 25 years. I did happen to be in New Zealand and had the opportunity to go into a small recording studio in Wellington, New Zealand, and talk to a young lady who was reputed to be the finest fiddle player in New Zealand, and asked her how she learned the American country music and how she learned to play as well as she did. And she said, by buying all of Howdy Forrester's albums and listening to them. So I think that around the world, I have others here today. At this point, I want to ask the honoree to come out. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Howdy Forrester. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Howard, it goes without saying the contributions that you made to country music, to the Grand Ole Opry. I want to read a proclamation that has come to us from the state capital in Tennessee by His Excellency Ned R. McWhirter, Governor, to Big Howdy Howard Forrester. Greetings. You have been selected to receive the Governor's Outstanding Tennessean Award. I hereby confer this award because of your outstanding achievement. Signed, Ned R. McWhirter, Governor of the State of Tennessee.
Howard, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Porter.
I know they like to hear you say hello to everybody, and you mean a great deal to us, to not only to the Smoky Mountain Boys, but to everybody in country music. We're very thankful for you.
Well, it's a great day for me. When I first started in the business many years ago, the fellow I started to work for told me when these people said all these nice things about you, don't believe them. After hearing all these wonderful testimonials, it's hard for me not to believe something.
We have one other presentation to make too, Howard. And Jerry Strobel of the Grand Ole Opry, ladies and gentlemen, has a presentation to make here that I know Howard will cherish forever. Jerry?
Howdy. On behalf of the Grand Ole Opry and the Country Music Association, who are co-sponsors of the Grandmasters Fiddling Championship, we want to present to you this Fiddler Award. And for your long and distinguished career, for your contributions to country music, to fiddling, to the Smoky Mountain Boys, and to the Grand Ole Opry. Congratulations.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Jerry Strobel, and Howard Forrester. And I hope you've enjoyed our tribute to this great man.